October 1656, Bristol, England. A 40-year-old preacher named James Nayler rides into the city on a donkey while 7 followers, mostly women, throw their cloaks in the mud before him, singing "Holy, Holy." When magistrates arrest them, they find something in the court testimonies that makes Puritan authorities physically recoil. Multiple witnesses report these women had been kissing Nayler's hands, his feet, even his face during religious meetings. In public, Parliament debates for weeks whether to execute him. But here's what the records actually show. Nayler wasn't some rogue cult leader. He was a respected member of the fastest-growing religious movement in England, the Quakers. And the kissing? That was official doctrine. How did a biblical greeting become a criminal investigation? According to the Cambridge University archives and the digitized journals of George Fox, founder of the Quakers, this is the story of how one religious movement's embrace of physical touch ignited a moral panic, destroyed reputations, and forced a radical group to police the very intimacy that defined them. Today you'll discover 1. The documented biblical practice that made Quakers greet each other with mouth-to-mouth kisses, and why 17th century authorities called it lewdness under the guise of worship. 2. The real court cases where women were imprisoned specifically for kissing other believers. 3. The internal Quaker records that prove even they didn't know where spiritual passion should end and physical boundaries begin. Every claim is sourced. The confusion was real. Let's go. A 28-year-old shoemaker's apprentice named George Fox climbs a rocky summit and experiences what he later describes in his journal as a vision. God has no use for churches, priests, or rituals. The divine speaks directly to anyone willing to wait in silence for the inner light. Within 3 years, Fox has 30,000 followers. They call themselves the Society of Friends. Others call them Quakers, a mockery of how they physically tremble during worship when the Spirit supposedly moves through them. But it's not just the shaking that disturbs authorities. Fox's journal, entry dated 1653, defends a practice most English Christians had abandoned centuries earlier, the holy kiss. He writes, "Greet one another with a holy kiss, as the Apostle Paul commanded. We are bound to this in love." This wasn't symbolic. Court records from Derbyshire, 1654, describe Quaker men and women kissing on the mouth in public markets after convincement, their term for conversion. The magistrate writes, "They embrace with lips upon lips, man and woman alike, and call it worship." And here's the cultural earthquake. Quaker women were kissing men who weren't their husbands. In Puritan England, where women could be publicly whipped for adultery based on rumors alone, this was legal dynamite. The practice spreads with the movement. A 23-year-old woman named Martha Simmons joins the Quakers in London. Records from the Quaker Book of Sufferings, a ledger kept to document persecution, show that in April 1655, she was arrested at a public meeting for disordered behavior. What was the behavior? According to the constable's testimony, she had kissed 3 different men during worship and called it sealed by the Spirit. Yes, but authorities couldn't prove it was sexual. Quakers cited scripture. Case dismissed. Martha Simmons is now part of James Nayler's inner circle, that same preacher from Bristol. And this is where the paper trail gets strange. A letter dated July 1656, written by another Quaker named Thomas Goodare, survives in the Friends Historical Library at Swarthmore College. He writes to George Fox with alarm. James is kissed by his followers in a manner that invites reproach upon friends. "And a stranger doth kiss him beyond what is seemly between brethren." George Fox's reply, preserved in his journal, "Let love be pure." That's it. No prohibition. No clear boundary. But a newly discovered Quaker disciplinary record from 1657 shows the leadership was starting to panic because the accusations weren't just coming from outside anymore. October 24th, 1656. James Nayler and his followers are dragged before Parliament. The charge, blasphemous behavior. But as you read the actual trial transcript, published in a collection of sundry books, 1716. It becomes clear the real scandal wasn't the donkey or the holy chance. It was the women. Martha Simmons testifies under oath that she kissed Nayler's hand, as one would kiss the hand of Christ. Member of Parliament William Kiffin asks, "And his lips?" She answers, "If the Spirit moved me, yes." Another follower, Dorcas Herbery, is questioned about kneeling before Nayler with her head in his lap during prayer. She doesn't deny it. She says, "There is no sin in the touch of saints." The court explodes. Nayler is convicted. His sentence, documented in the Commons Journal, December 1656, 310 lashes. Tongue bored through with a hot iron. Forehead branded with the letter B for blasphemer. Imprisoned indefinitely, he survives 2 years. He dies in 1660, age 44, from injuries sustained during a robbery while traveling to a Quaker meeting. His last recorded words, "There is a spirit which I feel that delights to do no evil." But everyone missed this one detail in the trial records. George Fox himself is called to testify. And when asked directly whether Quakers practice carnal kissing under pretense of faith, his recorded answer is a masterpiece of evasion. "We greet one another in the Lord. If there be offense, it is in the eye of the beholder." That non-answer told Quaker communities everything. The leadership wouldn't defend them if they were accused. For over 300 years, the official Quaker story has been this: the holy kiss was a misunderstood biblical practice. Persecution came from Puritan paranoia. End of story. But in 2003, historian Dr. Phyllis Mack published Heart Religion in the British Enlightenment, which analyzed internal Quaker women's writings held at the Woodbrook Quaker Study Center in Birmingham. What she found changes everything. Multiple women's journals from 1657 to 1670 describe confusion, guilt, and fear about physical contact during worship. A 1658 entry by a Quaker named Rebecca Travers reads, "I know not if my love for him, a fellow Quaker, be of God or of flesh. We have kissed in purity, yet my heart trembles after." Another by Anne Cam, 1660. "The brethren speak of love without bounds, yet when I embraced Sister Margaret with a kiss, others whispered, 'What is pure before God?'" And here's the evidence that even Quaker men noticed the problem. A 1661 internal memo unearthed in the archives at Friend's house, London, shows that George Fox quietly issued new guidance. "Let the kiss of charity be given sparingly, and not between young men and young women, except in the presence of elders." The twist? It wasn't persecution that killed the holy kiss. It was the Quakers themselves, because even they couldn't answer the question, when does spiritual intimacy become physical temptation? James Nayler's women followers were never publicly rehabilitated. Martha Simmons disappears from records after 1658. Historians assume death in poverty. Cause of death, unknown. George Fox, meanwhile, went on to marry Margaret Fell in 1669, a widow and powerhouse Quaker organizer. He lived until 1691, aged 66, and died peacefully in London. The Society of Friends became one of the most influential religious movements in the Western world. Quakers led abolitionist movements, founded Pennsylvania, championed prison reform. But the holy kiss? Erased. Today, if you attend a Quaker meeting, you'll find silence, simplicity, and handshakes. The records and membership committees at London Yearly Meeting confirmed in correspondence. There is no formal prohibition on greeting with a kiss, but there's also zero institutional memory that it was ever widespread doctrine. I contacted 3 Quaker historians for this video. One replied, "We acknowledge early Friends practiced the holy kiss. It's not emphasized in our teaching today." But here's the modern legacy no one talks about. The Quakers pioneered the idea that spiritual intensity and physical boundaries could conflict, and that religious communities might need to regulate intimacy even when doctrine says it's holy. Every modern church, appropriate touch policy, every youth group rule about hugs, Every clergy ethics guideline about counseling behind closed doors. It all traces back to the same question the 1650s Quakers couldn't answer. Can you have passion without danger? One last thing. Fragment tucked inside a 1659 Quaker pamphlet. The handwriting matches James Nayler's. It's addressed to M.S. Likely Martha Simmons. It was never sent. The fragment reads, "Thou hast kissed me as Judas kissed Christ in love, yet unto betrayal. I forgive thee, for I know not if I led thee into light or into shadow." We don't know what he meant. We don't know what actually happened in those meetings. We only know what the survivors wrote and what they chose to erase. The full trial transcripts, George Fox's complete journals, and the Book of Sufferings are linked below. Fact check me. This is history that's been sanitized for 300 years. This is Blood and Empire. We'll see you in the next one.